In this video, we're going to look into the Save and Return Later feature when it comes to accessing surveys at a later time. We'll also look at the survey login feature, which allows participants to enter a password or other login credentials instead of having to remember the randomly generated return code. We'll start by looking at the Save and Return Later feature in general. To do this, we're going to go to the Online Designer. In the Online Designer, we'll go to Survey Settings, and then scroll down until we find the Survey Access options. The first three options here deal with how many people can access a survey and for how long people can access it. The final is allow the Save and Return Later option for respondents. By default, this will be turned off in your surveys, but you can turn it on. Once it has been turned on, participants will have the option of choosing to save and come back to the survey at a later time. By default, REDCap will give them a randomly generated return code that they can use to return and access their survey. The first checkbox option here allows respondents to return without needing any return code at all. The benefit to this is that the return code is difficult for participants to remember and is often lost, requiring the participant to contact the study coordinator to help them get back into the survey. The disadvantage to this is it means anyone with access to the survey link could access the survey and see all the information that had already been entered. If the survey involves sensitive items or PHI, this could provide a privacy risk for the participant, as they are often not the only person who has access to their email or the survey link. The second option here is to allow respondents to return and modify completed responses. By default, once a survey has been completed in REDCap, the survey participant will no longer be able to access the completed survey to make changes to their responses. Selecting this option allows the survey respondent to access completed surveys. When they submit the newly completed survey, the timestamp will update, showing the most recent completion time. What the Save and Return Later option looks like is this. If we go to Manage Survey Participants and open the public survey link, you see that I have the option to save and return later. When I select it, I am given this return code. The return code must be entered properly in order for me to return to the survey. I can have REDCap email me the survey link to make it easier for me when I return. I can continue the survey now, or I can just close out. The Survey Login option can also be found on the Online Designer. It's available in the survey options like the survey queue and survey notifications. To use it, we'll need a specific field that will be used as the survey login credentials. This field has to exist in the project somewhere. I'm going to put it in the demographics so that I can allow the survey participant to create it themselves. So I'm going to make this a text box field and call it password. Now, we'll go back to the survey login. Now we click on the survey login. The first thing I have to do is enable this feature in REDCap. Then I'll choose my login field. Here, if you remember, it was password. If I wanted to, I could have more than one login field. So for example, you could require someone to correctly enter their last name, date of birth, and another piece of information. Here I can choose the number of fields that are required for login, up to 3, like we said above. Then we want to decide what surveys in the project this should be required for. It can go to all surveys or only selected surveys. For right now, I'm going to put only selected surveys because it would be very difficult for the participant to enter the password in on the first survey, since that's where they're creating it in the first place. And then you can create a custom error message. Finally, you can enable some additional security settings. You can say the number of failed login attempts before the respondent is locked out, and you can say how long the person would be locked out, should they fail to log in properly. For now, we'll leave those disabled. To leave them disabled, just set them to 0. Because we didn't enable the survey login on all forms, we'll need to go into the survey settings for the forms we did enable it on. When I scroll down to Survey Access this time, there is a new option, Enforce Survey Login. By selecting Yes here, I am saying that the survey login has to be enabled on this for participants to access the form at all. I'm also going to turn on the Save and Return Later. We'll save the changes. Let's go to the public survey link to demonstrate how this works now. I enter in the basic information. This is obviously an extremely insecure password being used for demonstration purposes only. You should never use a password like this with a real document. We submit, and the next survey automatically launches, but it requires me to enter in the password. By default, it will obscure what's been typed, but I can choose to have it show the value. I log in, and I'm able to complete the new survey. If you don't want the participant to create their own survey login, you can do it yourself. The information will simply need to be pre-filled as data in the project before the participant needs to use it to log in. So, for example, I could create a new administrative form in the project. This new form isn't a survey, and the survey participants will never need to see it. In it, I can put basic information, like the participant name, and then I can move my password field to that form. Now, instead of having the participant enter the login information, I can upload it ahead of time and let the participant know what their survey login will be. I can make it unique to every participant, or I can make it something standard and simple that all my participants will use. What I choose will depend on the security needs of my project. A final key item here is that sometimes especially when the participant is entering the information themselves, you don't necessarily want what they're typing in as a password to be viewable on the screen as they're typing it. For that, we have an action tag. If you haven't used action tags, we have a great video that goes through some of the most common ones. To add an action tag to a field, you'll go to the action tag/field annotation box, and the easiest way is to click Learn About Action Tags. The one we want is this password mask. This masks the value of a text field so that the true value isn't visible on the web page after it has been entered. We'll simply add that and close it. And now when I go in to do data entry, I can type in the password, and it's masked so it's not visible. It is important to note that this will be visible in a data export. However, it won't be visible on the monitor when you're doing data entry or when your participant is filling out your survey. These are a few different ways that you can control how your participants return to your survey later on and what kind of credentials they must present before they're able to open or continue with the survey. Thank you.